Well, welcome everybody. Another episode, another Monday, another week, another beautiful day here at Two Chaps, Many Cultures Towers, and episode 176. Welcome to another week, and today we're talking about style switching. If you find yourself working with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different parts of the world, even maybe your neighbor, you might find that they interact a little differently, and therefore you might find yourself matching that. And we're going to talk about what that kind of might take, anecdotal experiences we've had from clients, and what you might be able to do about it, or whether you should do it at all. Let's stick around and we'll talk about it. Yes, indeedy, it is the show about the business of culture and the culture of business. Two Chaps, Many Cultures, episode 176. How are you today, pal?
I am marvelous, Mike. Marvelous. Welcome, everybody. This is the show about the business of culture and the culture of business. And you're watching this from somewhere around the globe, and you might be watching this live as it is happening in the moment now. And you might as well watch this a second or third time around, because we're just inundating you with such great nuggets of information that you wanted to watch it over and over again, or you simply didn't get around to watching it live and then you kind of snuck in watching the recording. Either way, here, tell us where in the world you are. We want to get to know you, want to hear your input. We want to know where in the world you are and which style you might prefer. What style do you prefer, Brett?
You know, I don't know now. I mean, I like a little bit of a laid back, bit of banter, a bit of a few jokes, bit of sarcasm, but mixed with a little bit of let's get down to business and let's the rubber hits the road type of approach. So that's my style, not the right style or the wrong style. I'm just saying that's my style, and many other people that we work with in our work come from all kinds of different backgrounds. And this was, again, kind of this topic came out of experiential and anecdotes. A lot of what we do is just anecdotes. It's a pattern that we, I guess, observe in the clients that we work with. And it happened this weekend, of course, we've weekends are times where we're still at work and we're talking with people, and there is this observation, as is, pretty common, that if I've now been in this country, my new country, and I'm operating in a multicultural team, why do I get home every weekend and I cannot get my brain to work? It is basically worn out. I'm done. That's it, And that never used to happen at home, right? That never was the way it was. I could kind of come home on the weekend. I could do my activities I like to do. I had energy for them. I had the brain space and the capacity to do that. So this has always led us to think about why is this and what contributes to this profound sense of fatigue and just worn outedness that comes with having to do this. So it is really, it was so common that I thought, well, maybe it's something we should touch on. We can bounce, Christian and I can bounce off anecdotes and do that kind of thing. But I think that then that today took, separate. We took two different approaches at looking at two different styles. And I did it through the linguistic approach. And I went down this rabbit hole of discovering people that study this, like real smart people, not like us. People actually really do this for a living and study it. And Christian went down another path, and I think they both kind of are an example of two different ways that we are having to bring ourselves in a multi-style way, right? So that's the setup, I guess, of what we're trying to talk about today.
And I would argue the linguistic part of it is quite valid, because I notice this when I am outside of my native language area, when I have to tell my brain, okay, now switch into foreign language mode and work and compute and operate in foreign language. I can do that. And in the beginning, it took me a lot of brain power to do that. And
Mm.
there is this English phrase that I always found cute and funny, and it's one of those English idioms that in my language, my native language, didn't make much sense. There's this phrase of being tongue-tied or tongue-twisted. And I thought, okay, whatever, I'll memorize that term, and I'm sure it means what it's supposed to mean. And until I experienced it for myself. So being in a foreign language or operating in a language that's not my native tongue, it really got my tongue tied up. I felt it at the end of the day, or maybe even before the end of the day, that my mouth got sore because my lips, my tongue, and all the muscles that created sounds, or that still create sounds, they are used in a different way because English makes different sounds than my native language. So using the foreign language more than I'm using my own language really got my face tired, and I wouldn't say my muscles sore, but I felt tongue tied, and it finally made sense. And at the end of the day, working across cultures, when you have to adjust yourself to a different style, whether it be the language or the behavior that comes with it, will occasionally make you a little bit fatigued, right? And that may sound like a first world problem. However, until you've lived through it yourself, you don't understand how it affects your mental strength, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is the guy I found. I mean, Google is wonderful. It really, this is an American linguistics. He's still alive, by the way, 94 years of age. He's, he's really seen as somebody who's started out in linguistics, then got into sociolinguistics and talking about the dynamic nature of accents in different regions of the US and so on and so forth. But then I discovered part of his research was based in cognitive and cultural styles. And that's where I thought, maybe there's something here. So, of course, it was, I think when I discovered it was a context he was talking through was basically through the expression or how maybe an immigrant society might come in and adjust the linguistic styles of the local area, like in a city like Chicago or so on and so forth. But you can just imagine they were talking about the cognitive dissonance that comes when people who are so used to talking in a certain linguistic fashion are faced with the evolution of their language, and not a foreign language, but like you're talking about, which is just as valid, but even just an different way of speaking English can be cognitively dissonant and cause you stress and anxiety. Yep. So imagine having to do, like you're saying, having to then operate in another language, and then that kind of sense of there's the physical, like you're expressing a physical sense of tongue-tiedness, and then also the mental, which is just so often what our clients kind of say, that's kind of makes sense because I'm so worn out, but I can just riff for a day in my own language,
But even within that language, so to your point, now English for me has become a second first language. I mean, I'm being a little bit forward with this, and the native speakers will say, yeah, but dude, I can still hear it's not your first language. Yeah, I get it. It's not. But I think for myself, how my brain uses it, English has become second nature. I don't have to switch it on, right? So I'm blessed like that. And yet within the English language, I'm finding myself switching codes. Whenever I talk to you, Brett, I mean, you know this, but when I pick up the phone or when we're here and you and I communicate, I am adjusting to your Australian style of using English. Then I walk across the street well, actually, my neighbor walked across the street to come to my front door this just an hour ago. And my neighbors are African American. Most of my neighbors are African American. And I'm adjusting to their use of the English language, right? That enduring that, or not enduring, or living in that energy for all day would require me to use a different side of my brain, or would strain my mental strength differently than speaking to, let's say, the average white guy or woman in my professional environment, right? It is
Yeah.
a different type of computing power. Those of you who know IT, I don't know much, but I learned there's an app on my computer, the CPU unit reader or something. It tells me how much of my memory is being used constantly at any given second. So if your CPU is fully engaged, you're using all the horsepower that's built in there, right? And doing this in your native style uses a lot less horsepower. Your RPMs go down. You can idle along and still get results. But the minute you're put into an environment where you have to get into different gear, basically, you rev up. You're using more fuel. You're using more brain capacity, and that can be quite tiring.
Yeah. I used the example last week with somebody, and I stopped myself doing it because I knew it was beating me up. And that is trying to be through the lens of efficiency and serving the clients is that, you know, I've done days where I've done 3 different trainings, and you would think, oh, that's great. Okay. So you can do 3 different trainings. It's very efficient. Look at you. And I'm, you know, maybe I'm doing it to say, look at me. How good am I? But I remember just when it's 3, I can do a whole day of training with a client and in one particular style. And I'm, you know, I'm kind of worn out at the end of the day, but not, I'm energized by it. But that is a different, what I'm here talking about is a different set of circumstances where in the morning you might be working with Korean, in the middle of the day, a German, and the afternoon, an American or a you know, a Latinx person. 3 distinct styles in which, as cultural trainers, we kind of have to adjust to in the learning style and the deliverabilities that we offer. So for me, that at the end of that day, I was toast, done. Like, put a fork in me. I just need to sleep. And I was always kind of just wondering, well, hang on, I'm doing what I love to do, right? I'm literally doing what I love to do. This is a dream job for me. But why do I feel so incredibly fatigued and tired after doing what should energize me? And it still energizes me, but you know what I mean? So this is kind of where I do the acrobatics. It's
Well, and then would it be fair to say that since this is, you're working at your peak, you're in your zone, right? This is what you were built for. So wouldn't it be okay to accept that at the end of doing that, you are drained, and that means that you exhausted your resources for what you're passionate about and what you love to do? So there's nothing, I would say that's not necessarily wrong to feel drained at the end of this. It simply, it brings to our awareness that our brain, doing brain work, doing non-manual labor, brain work can be exhausting too. And knowing that it takes additional energy to do that across different styles, in our cases across cultures, is something I think, especially if you live in a diverse society like the ones here in North America, it's quite a helpful insight, right? So in the US, we live in a culture that is still predominantly shaped by the white majority, which we all know is shrinking, and there's the levels of diversity are increasing, and we're learning to get better with that. But overall, in corporate America, the dominant work style and behavioral and communicative style is still very white. And I didn't, as a white person myself, I didn't become aware of this until I engaged more with the Black community. And there's a good friend of ours who has 2 names, or she has a first name and a middle name. And when she goes to work she's African American, and when she goes to work in a leadership position in her company that is predominantly white, she will be called by her first name. The name that everybody knows her by. That's the name on her LinkedIn profile, by the way. When she is not in that white environment, when she is in an environment where she is comfortable being her full self, when she doesn't have to go into corporate America and adjust to that style, she uses her middle name, or people will address her by her middle name because those are the people who know her that way. So there is this very almost Well, I'm not going to give away her name, but her first name, or the name she uses in corporate America, is a fairly ethnic neutral name. Is actually from the Bible. It's a biblical name. And her other name that she uses when she doesn't have to adjust to somebody else's style, that is I would say, a name you would only hear in the African American world, or maybe in the Arabic world. So two different names, two different styles, which brought to my awareness, wait a second, but you're American, US American, and you're having to style switch from your home to your office? Other people don't seem to have to do that. Why are you doing that? She says, well, that's my reality as a Black woman in corporate America. I could be my Black self. However, I would have not made it to the level where I'm at now. So if you're asking yourself if you're either part of the majority white population in the US, or if you're an outsider coming to the US, wondering what's all this code switching about, and why are people, or some people, talking about it, and why are others not, it is just as draining for the non-majority white population in the US as it is for you as an outsider coming in. So the fatigue that you're feeling as an outsider coming to the US, adjusting to US work style, is very similar, if not the same, that non-majority people in corporate America have to adjust to and do the mental acrobatics the same way that you're doing it. Let that sink in.
Good point. Good point. So we've talked about the linguistics, the talk, the verbal. What about the physical? What about walking into a room, when we used to walk into rooms, but now we will get back to walking into rooms. What about walking into a room and you've got somebody you see you have an affinity with, and but maybe the others you're not sure, and you're probably, maybe you've engaged with them before, you kind of know what their style is in terms of greetings and things like that. This is another aspect of it, right? The physical greeting aspect. We can talk about, the physical greeting tendencies of a Latinx person to maybe hug and touch me, more touchy-feely, as opposed to somebody else who might be, let me alone, I'm just g'day, like have a handshake, that kind of style. So maybe there's that too, right? Which can be, for when you're in a mixed setting, it can be, I would think it can be tiring anyway. Unless you're very, very skilled at it and being able to pick up those kind of things. I'm sure that everybody would make a mistake in a general setting of 20 or more people,
Plus, I think there's a difference between doing that in a work setting or in a social setting. As you were talking, I just remembered this past weekend, one of our neighbors, also a friend, had a birthday, and he invited his circle of friends to his birthday shindig. Yes, we still have COVID, and yes, a lot of the people are vaccinated, and those who are not, we took necessary measures, so rest assured, it was not a super spreader event. And yet there were people from various walks of life, from various cultures. So I'm here, the white guy, immigrant German at this party. There's a bunch of Black folks there, African Americans and Africans from different parts of Africa, Northern Arabic parts, Sub-Saharan Africa, people from different parts of Europe. So it was a almost United Nations gathering. And exactly what you said, the hellos, or the physical distance between people, yes or no, was very much determined by that. In a social setting, to me, not stressful or not physically challenging to do that, or mentally challenging. In the same situation, in a work-related environment, I would be very conscious of every step or misstep that I take, right?
Yeah.
To me, different animals. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's right. I mean, and maybe there is protocols. Some cultures really are levered by protocols, and it's not that you can go to a country like Japan or other countries where there are certain protocols around greeting, and that you're going to be frog marched out of the place, if you screw up. Because usually these people are exposed and used to working with people from different cultures, or Western cultures, for example. So they will forgive you some small faux pas. I mean, I guess we would argue that this is a case for learning a little bit of style switching in a very short period of time that can open up the mind of the people you're engaging with if you show in their setting the respect of at least doing your homework and learning the correct ways to greet.
Right.
So you're right. So that this has real business impact. You can, well, even some cultures may be a little difficult in social settings. It's just as awkward. But I think in general, I agree. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And I've learned this, right? So this is my work, right? So I think I do this maybe more subconsciously now. And I know that when other people notice how I interact with different cultures on a first, like within the first couple of minutes, they probably are more aware how I adjust. I don't pay attention to that any longer, but I used to. And then I observe others as they handle themselves in these situations. And I observe sometimes the awkwardness or the disconnect of, is there a handshake, or do we go in for the hug, or do we, how do we initiate contact, right? And there is a former leader of the free world. We have a little image or a GIF. It's a GIF or GIF. I'm not going to go into that debate.
What's your style? Is your style GIF or GIF? This is.
No, I would say it's a GIF, but other people have different views on that, so I'm not going to go into that. But we should do a whole episode around GIF or GIF. So I give you a GIF from number 44. So you look at Mr. Obama, how he masterfully switches his greeting code, right? So he knows what to do with whom and how he gets the best results with whom. So
yeah,
is that how we all do it all the time? I guess not, but the goal would be to be as elegantly alternating between different styles, right?
Yeah. To me, that denotes somebody who's obviously got a depth of self-awareness, right, about who they are, where they come from, what their origins are, but also an awareness of how that impacts the people around them. Okay. And I think that Barack Obama was a master at that. There's been many, many people like him that came before him. And this is not a political discussion. There have been great Republican leaders that have been able to do this as well. But it's just an example where if you watch someone like that, some tend to feel like they're pulling it off effortlessly, right, without even thinking about it. And practice. So that's where practice can come into play. But when you're not practiced by it or with that skill, you have to do the work. It's like learning a new language. Like I guess as Kristen said before, learning another language takes a great degree of CPU and cognitive skill. Listening, speaking, and then forget about the writing and the actual real grammar, which is my problem with Polish. But it is a skill and it's a muscle that people can build up. But so when just as you go to the gym and you run a marathon runners don't finish a marathon and go, well, that's great, I'm ready to do another one. Like, I think that your point, well, some idiots are. I don't know what's wrong with those people, but you can get like, it goes back to what you say before. If you're doing what you love and you're running a marathon and you get to the end, I think you're right. I think, the ultimate expression of achievement is that I have just worn myself out achieving a great goal and doing what I love to do.
You're spent for now.
Absolutely. For now, right? And and the ability for you to recover, because then I'm thinking, as you spoke about that, I'm thinking, well, I could probably get up the next day and be able to do it all again, right? Because I guess
in our work we are, right? Even though we might be spent at the end of the day, we still go back and do it again. And to your point about practicing it, even with all the practice that I've had, I noticed myself just today how I screwed up. So, and it wasn't even that stressful, but I had 3 video calls back to back this morning. The first one was with a gentleman in Germany. So I was able to easily switch into a German communication style or into that code. No issues, whatever. The second call was with a lady from Serbia who spoke excellent English, so just a little bit of code switching, and yet adjusting to a more Mediterranean European style. And the third call threw me for a loop. It was a three-way call with a gentleman that I'd already known quite well, who's from Austria, so same language, slightly different cultural style, and a lady from Kyrgyzstan. So I've yet to have deep understanding of Kyrgyz culture or of any Central Asian cultures, whether it be Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, you name them, Azerbaijan. I don't have a lot of personal experience dealing with these cultures. And since the call was initiated by the gentleman from Austria, who is the leader of their team, my mind immediately, without thinking, went to a more assertive, direct communication style modeled by the Austrian gentleman. And halfway through the call, I begin realizing, wait a minute, this lady from Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, that's not her style. And at some point, her nonverbal communication, I picked up on it. I realized I need to ask my question differently. I want to massage this message in a way that she feels comfortable speaking up, because I felt for a second there that she just said yes, yes, yes without meaning it, because she felt a little bit intimidated by the assertive, direct communication style of these two white guys from Central Europe. So even with all the practice, sometimes the code switch isn't happening automatically on autopilot, right? So yeah, be okay with not always hitting it right out of the ballpark.
Yeah. And I mentioned before, do you actually have to do it? That's the question. If I do it too much, clients will say, if I do it too much, am I losing my own style? Am I losing my identity? And, so it can feel like that as well. There's that cognitive appreciation for the fact that I'm kind of not sure who I am. Like, I'm going home to my partner and my children, and I kind of used to be a certain way with them, and now I'm finding myself kind of missing, like, who did I used to talk about or talk like? So there's many different, I mean, like, we're going for hours and hours, and we could bring on so many guests to talk about this, and we're bringing at it from a kind of an anecdotal and also a short little, for me, again, for both of us, let's prepare for this and maybe put a bit of a wrapper or framework around some of the anecdotes we've talked about. And as I mentioned before, I started to go down a rabbit hole. and there could have been many rabbit holes that I could have gone down and come back out and gone down other ones. So I think understanding, again, we always say self-awareness. What is your capacity to be able to change, and you're embracing it? May be a cultural thing for you. Do you embrace change, these kind of change, as a cultural construct? I mean, this is certainly important, but being self-aware and then being able to know what your boundaries are, setting boundaries, setting the framework around how your team interacts with each other, either encouraging or giving people a break from that style switching, is going to make them productive, because there's always kind of, and I guess we're in a country of the US, it is all about productivity. So it's about the time spent and the busyness and things like that. But I think taking a step back from it is just as enriching, and can be probably add to the productivity and the bandwidth of the person if you give them the grace to take a break from it, because it can be tiring. It is immensely, as Christian says, a high use of your CPU energy in your brain. And it is, as I said before, it is just such a common comment from our clients when they're working across borders, and that it needs to be valued. And I think it gets down to literally an expression of how much you want to be inclusive of your different styles of your team and be respectful.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So should you be in a situation where where your style is the one that is being switched to in order to facilitate efficiency, because you're the majority style setter for whatever reason, whether you chose to or not, become aware that there might be people in your team, in your environment, that are doing mental acrobatics to meet your style. give them the grace. Just like Brett said, recognize that for them sometimes they need a breather, and that it's okay to take that breath.
Absolutely. So again, as we were prompted before by our wonderful partner in crime here, tell us what your style is. What's your style? What's your style, dude? Tell us what your style is. And maybe, actually, I'm thinking you could go back, and last week was a whole episode about styles and driven by values and things like that. Not, we won't loop back too much, but last week was a great expression about covering different styles and how those different, or bridging those gaps between how you communicate with people on that level. So that may be something to go back, but really tell us what your preferred style is, where you've seen yourself being kind of worn out by having to match the style of other people. Or have you found yourself, as Christian said before, all of a sudden aware that you're the dominant one and everybody's trying to match you, and therefore their level of energy is going down, but you feel fine. So this is a contributing factor. If you just do a little bit of reflection and introspection, you will absolutely find out wonderful things about yourself. Maybe not so wonderful things. I find out some terrible things about myself.
Well, that's you, but I have nothing to do with that.
Right. You're German. You're the one that tells me. That's the point.
Not here. We agree
No. That's not in public. Not in public, right? Okay. Well, that's yeah.
So whether you switch or not, whether you're aware of your style or not, we hope you become very much aware of it, and maybe consider the styles you're switching into, even within your family. It's not just about linguistics and culture. It could be genders, it could be generations, it could be within your immediate neighborhood. Just become keen observers of your style and those of others, because self-awareness and self-observation, that's where it begins. And the beauty will be in, as we said, the elegant alternating between those and facilitating a great flow of human connection. That's what I think is important. And we hope you have a great week of human connection across all these styles. Switch them up and down, switch them left and right. Get to your soundboard and your switchboard and practice. And we will see you again tomorrow at some time. We don't know yet, but we'll let you know.
Some stage. Yeah, we'll be back. See you tomorrow, folks.
See you tomorrow.